Welcome to Table Bible Studies with Dan and Ben. New studies are posted every Thursday. We're studying the book of Daniel. Once again, we find Daniel dealing with a Babylonian king who needs an interpreter. Join us in Daniel chapter 5.
So we're looking at Daniel chapter 5 today.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of this chapter, I have a title, not part of the original text, but it says Belshazzar's Feast.
Yeah.
Belshazzar was a king. Now, we've changed kings. Up till now, the first 4 verses, we were talking about Nebuchadnezzar. He was the king.
Yes.
And he was the number 2 king. His father more or less founded and established the Babylonian Empire, and then Nebuchadnezzar expanded it and made all kinds of beautiful projects in it, and really made it even better and bigger than it was when his father had it.
That is good.
But now almost 70 years have passed.
70
and so we go from Daniel in those early days, he was like 18 or 19, 16 or 17, somewhere in his teens. And then in the last chapter where he interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he was probably in his late 40s, early 50s.
Okay.
And now we're at the end of the Babylonian Empire. It doesn't last that long. It lasts for about 70 years. And there's a guy named Belshazzar in charge who is sort of the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, but there were a couple of other people that ruled in between. There was a lot of intrigue going on and a couple of coups. So now it's Belshazzar, and Daniel is probably in his 80s by now.
Okay.
Now, one thing I think we need to point out at this stage, a lot of times when you read Bible stories, you get the impression that these people saw miracles and dramatic events practically every day. Every day a new miracle for Daniel and all kinds of things. But keep in mind, Daniel lived to be in his 90s almost certainly. And we have 6 major exciting stories told about him. So 6 adventures over the course of 90 years. You know what that means? It means that most of Daniel's days were just ordinary. It's not like every day he was being put in a lion's den, or every day his friends were in fiery furnaces, or every day he's seeing a miracle. Most of Daniel's days were him getting up in the morning, eating his little breakfast, doing his normal things, serving different kings, and going home, having a quiet dinner perhaps, and going to bed.
Yeah.
Now, why is that important? Well, sometimes we can get the impression that, God ought to be doing dramatic stuff in our life every day. And we forget about the blessing and value of ordinary days. Sometimes I think we need to be thankful for ordinary days. No big challenge. We're not sick. We're not under pressure. There's nobody about to throw us into a den of lions. We're just getting up in the morning and going about our business, living our ordinary day. And we can be thankful for that. Who would want to go through life-challenging, scary experiences every day of their life? You couldn't hardly stand it, could you?
No, I can't stand it. It's a horrible time, if you kind of, every time you got a challenge is, facing you, and you going through from one thing to another one. It's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you might say, all right, well, we read Daniel, though, we're reading all these adventures and dramatic experiences. And the answer would be, well, of course we are. It would be boring if we had a whole book on Daniel and most of the chapters were all about him in his ordinary days. He gets up, he has breakfast, he does whatever he did and goes to bed. I mean, that would be the most boring book in the world. It's kind of like when we worked on your autobiography and you included a lot of the more dramatic experiences of your life.
Yeah.
You had a lot of ordinary days. We didn't, you didn't include in that book. You didn't talk about get up in the morning, have a little breakfast, go out and do your work, come home. We mentioned about that, but
we didn't make it the main story.
Right. And that's how all authors do and biographers do. So we should, again, just recognize that it's not going to be a miracle every day. It's not going to be a vision every night. It's not going to be a dramatic dream constantly all our lives.
Yeah.
God's mostly going to say, go about your life, mind your business, do your work well, be responsible, serve me, live honestly, live with self-control. And once in a while, I may tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, I want to do something very special today
Right.
or for this season. And here come the miracles, here comes the exciting stuff, here comes the testimony. And then after a while, we go back to those ordinary days, and that's just not so bad, is it?
No, it's not so bad, to do some things and at least walk and do something meaningful, make a living. And at the same time, you can have some days you can be like, okay, this is like ordinary. We're doing not too much today.
Yeah.
You can just, take a ride around, maybe go to the restaurants and just chill out, eat and drink, and then come home, relax. And, the next day you get on with the walk, it's good.
Yeah. So let's get to Belshazzar. Like I said, by now Daniel's an old guy. He's in his 80s. And it says, Belshazzar the king made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords. Well, this is a big, big party. Now, what you don't realize is that while he's partying, there are enemy soldiers surrounding his city. The Medes and the Persians are about to conquer Babylon. But Belshazzar doesn't seem to be worried. One of the reasons he probably wasn't too worried was Babylon had huge walls. In those days, one of the major defenses of a city would be the walls. And the thicker the walls and the higher the walls, the safer you are. You can always have your soldiers at the top of the wall shooting down at people trying to climb.
Yeah.
So they had huge walls. They say you could even drive 2 chariots in a race across the top of the walls. They were so wide.
Yeah.
And he apparently didn't think there was any way that the enemy could break through and conquer him. So he's partying. And 1,000 of his big shots, his lords, his guys that were over various responsibilities in his kingdom, are all coming together. It says they drank wine. So there's a lot of drinking going on.
That is a major problem.
It is a major problem. So verse 2, while he tasted the wine, Belshazzar gave the command to bring the gold and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple, which had been in Jerusalem. Now, it says his father. In the Bible terms, a lot of times father just means your ancestor. It doesn't necessarily mean your literal father. So Nebuchadnezzar was not his father. He would be sort of a grandfather. But nevertheless, he had seen those golden cups and mugs that came from the temple. They had captured Israel, they'd captured Jerusalem, they had smashed down the temple, and they took anything of value, which would include the gold and the silver utensils and cups and mugs and things. So they had them in the treasury, but they weren't used commonly. It was just something, I guess you could go in and look at, or at least some people could.
Right.
He apparently had seen them in his younger days, probably thought, well, it'd be kind of cool to be drinking out of these. So he's feeling good. He's probably had quite a bit of wine to drink. He sends someone, go get those cups from the temple in Jerusalem. Let's drink out of those. So the Bible says, let's see, they drank wine, verse 4. They praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze and iron, wood and stone. So you get the idea that the writer here is sort of mocking them.
Yeah.
They're praising these idol gods made out of wood and stone and gold and silver. And they're praising them while they're drinking wine from these golden cups that had been part of the temple service in Jerusalem. So they're trying to sort of almost make light of Yahweh, the God of Israel. And that's just not a very smart thing to do, is it?
No, it's not a very smart thing. You should, respect some of the things that the people who were older than you did, when they keep some certain things in a way that they want it to be and leave it alone, you that is growing up be like, party over here. I got to destroy things. I got to, change things around. When you are changing things, it's not bad to change things around, but not the things that you have to leave alone.
Yeah. And, we read in the last chapter about Nebuchadnezzar, how he lost his mind and he came to realize there's one God, the Most High God, he rules. And he was humbled, and probably he wouldn't dare have touched those golden cups from Jerusalem anymore. He's like, just keep them there. I don't want to touch them. This God has shown me that he has all power, and I don't want to lose my mind a second time.
Somebody should have read the book.
Well, that's pretty much what Daniel is going to tell Belshazzar.
Read your ancestors, what they went through, what happened, and how they got through it. So that you know how to move.
Right.
Yeah.
So while they're partying and drinking and using these golden cups from Israel, from Jerusalem, from the temple, suddenly the king and apparently everybody there saw the fingers of a man's hand. So just like, not the whole man, just the hand or the fingers.
Like from here down?
I guess, with a writing instrument writing on the wall. We have a saying these days, don't hear it quite as often as you used to, but the handwriting on the wall, meaning, boy, it's pretty evident something bad's going to happen. That's the handwriting on the wall. This was the very first handwriting on the wall coming from a hand, but no body, just a hand.
That is a little scary.
You better believe it would be. So they had plastered walls, and the writing was on the wall. The king could see the part of the hand that wrote, so not the full arm, but just perhaps the hand itself. And the Bible says in verse 6, the king's countenance changed, his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his hips were loosened and his knees knocked against each other. He got so scared he couldn't hardly stand. His knees were knocking against each other. His legs were sort of half out of joint. He could barely hold himself up. He got so scared. That's scared.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the king immediately wants to know. He looks at what's written and he can't make it out. We don't know exactly whether it was written in some unique language or whether it was just because some people have said, well, it was just verbs and you couldn't make much sense of it.
Yeah.
Exactly what the problem or what the language was, we don't know. But
everybody was seeing it, or just one person?
It looks like everybody was. And everybody could clearly see what was written. So the king does what kings do, what Nebuchadnezzar used to do in his day, which was bring my advisors, my astrologers, my counselors, bring them here. Let's see what they have to say, because I can't figure it. What is that? And so he speaks. The king tells these guys that have come, whoever reads this writing and tells me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple. Well, purple was the color of kings and wealthy people. Right. So it's like you're going to get a very fancy set of clothes, and you'll have a chain of gold around his neck, and he'll be third ruler in the kingdom. I'll make you third ruler.
Promotion is coming, huh?
Right. If you can just tell me what's on this wall. Well, you can imagine some of them would say, well, I'll tell you and make up something just, in the hopes that he would be satisfied. But the Bible says they couldn't. Now, let's pause for a minute and think about this third ruler of the kingdom. We know that Belshazzar was the acting king.
Yeah.
So why would he not say, I'll make him my number 2 man? Why the third ruler of the kingdom? And for a long time, before archaeology demonstrated what was the case, people just assumed that this was either a mistake or there was somebody he held more important as his VP, his vice president.
Okay.
But we have learned through archaeology that his father, Belshazzar's father, was still alive. He was in another area, and he was not able to be there, so he had put his son in charge, Belshazzar. So the father was technically the number 1 guy. Okay. Belshazzar was the number 2 guy, and he's saying the third person will be whoever can tell me what this says.
Okay.
Which again is sort of more proof the Bible is telling the truth, because the Bible doesn't say anything about this. History tells us this. Archaeology tells us this. The Bible just says he'll be third ruler. But now it makes perfect sense if his father was still alive. Thanks for watching our study of the greatest book ever written, the Bible. In addition to these Bible studies with Ben and me, I also share what I call video devos, which are short teachings I give on various Bible topics. These teachings are normally, but not always, posted on Mondays. Be sure and click the subscribe button and then click that bell icon and choose Show All Notifications. That way you'll be notified every time we post a new video. And if you're struggling with diabetes, check out my other channel, which is called Beat Diabetes. God bless you, and see you again soon.